I was in the States, I realized that you guys are having a war also. There's a war for the legitimacy of Christianity in your culture. You're being delegitimized. You're being ostracized. They're saying, no, Christianity is not important. Now, anybody who knows anything about the history of the United States of America knows that Christianity played a role in creating the United States of America that we know today. But now there's a movement to delegitimize this. What's up? Now there's a movement to delegitimize, and you are fighting a battle. But here's the weird thing. The same people who are fighting against me and my reason to be here are the same people who are fighting against you and your right to be Christian. It is the same kind of battle. And I need you to realize that there is a battle going on. And sometimes, and I'm going to say this again, sometimes I need you guys to stand up and make a stand. Not just to sit down and say, okay, but actually, like the Bible says, to stand in the gap. And what I want to do is give you a little bit of information so you know what the gap looks like, how it is, and what you're supposed to be doing. But in order to do that, I got to go back into the history a little bit. Okay? Remember, we talked about the Ottoman Turks who were here from 1517. And for 400 years, the Muslim Turks were in control of this area, and they let the country run down into destitute. There was nothing else. I mean, there were no trees. Mark Twain rode through this valley in 1862, and he said, it's a desolate land. There's no trees. The roads were so run down, you couldn't even drive a carriage, a wagon through the roads. That's how run down the roads were. Nothing was working, and this land was nothing. Late 1800s, 1880, 1890, the whole world is going through this nationalistic kind of balagan. The Germans are becoming more Germans, the French are becoming more French, and the Jewish people keep asking themselves, wait a minute, if we're Germans, but we're Jewish, are we part of the German nation, or are we part of the Jewish nation? And on the whole, most of the Jews tried to assimilate into the world, into the countries that we were. The problem was that there was terrible persecution against the Jews, meaning the Germans did not allow the Jews to become German. The French were not allowing the Jews to become French. We were totally persecuted, and the Jews are going through an identity crisis. That all happens more or less towards the end of 1890, 1900, when the Jews stand up, and a man named Theodor Herzl, I don't know if you've ever heard that name, says, we believe that the Jews should return to their homeland. Where's the Jewish homeland? Here. What's the name of the Jewish homeland? Zion. This is the land of Zion. So Theodor Herzl puts together a movement that says the Jews should return to Zion. The name of the movement is Zionism. You've ever heard that term? Because a lot of people are saying Zionism is a terrible thing today. Zionism says Jews should live in this land. Do you agree with me on that one?
Yes.
So you're all Zionists. Let me make this clear. And you're going to hear some of this as we go from different sources. They're going to say, how can you be a Zionist? Because this is the homeland of the Jewish people. But Jews start coming back in small numbers in the beginning. There's always been a Jewish presence. On the hill in front of you, there's a town called Safed that have had Jews there since the time of King David. In Jerusalem, there's been Jews in the city of Jerusalem since the time of King David. Okay? I mean, that's how far back we go. But there were always a small minority, but Jews start coming back, buying up plots of land, and starting to put towns and villages, okay? We start building our homeland. The problem is that the Arabs who are living here, who most of them came during the Muslim periods, say, wait a minute, we don't want more Jews here. We like it as an Arab land, desolate, nothing building. Though some of them did like the fact that we're building roads, we're building houses, we're building hospitals. But slowly, the Jews start saying to themselves, we have a role. We can come back to our homeland. All of this changes in 1917. What happens in 1917? The world called it the Great War. Today we call it World War I. And in 1917, the British Empire conquers this area from the Turks, and we become part of the British Empire. The British say to themselves, we like the idea of the Jews having a homeland, and they write a declaration that says that the British Empire will allow the Jews to build a homeland. It's called the Balfour Declaration. I don't know if you've ever heard that. Okay? And basically Balfour, the foreign secretary of the British Empire, says let's start helping the Jews have a homeland. Based on the Balfour Declaration and other things, at the end of the war of World War I, the British were giving a mandate over this part of the world. A mandate means we, the British, are the government, and you, the people, do what we tell you to do. By the way, very colonial. I don't know if you've ever heard that term. You know, it's very colonial in a way. Okay, very similar to Hong Kong. Remember, British took over Hong Kong and said, you know, we tell what everybody. So from 1921, the British have a mandate in this part of the land. What's the name of the land? Well, here we call it Zion, but the world at this point is calling it the land of Palestine. Remember why they're calling it Palestine? It's because the Romans renamed it Palestine to to make the Jews upset. But in any case, the British take part of Palestine, give it to the Jordanians. So all the part over there on the other side of the valley goes to the Hashemite kingdom of Transjordan. That's what they created in 1922. And this part of the land, from the river to the sea, the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, stays in British hands. The British are the government. That's pretty accurate. Okay, Shane asks about the movie Exodus. By the way, after we've done this little speech, go see the movie Exodus. Or see if you can get it. I think Netflix has it.
I haven't watched it.
Okay. And yeah, it's about the story that I'm talking about right now. It stars Paul Newman. Though it's kind of weird for us. Paul Newman is an Israeli. He's a little bit too pretty. I mean, it's
You know that he's Jewish, though, right?
Yeah, I know that he's Jewish. Okay, so is Kirk Douglas, by the way. Get your hands on another movie called Cast a Giant Shadow. It's really, really old. Kirk Douglas stars in Cast a Giant Shadow, and it's about an American colonel who helps the Jews in the Battle of 1948. Very interesting. But to make the long story short, the British are the government, the Jews are here, the Arabs are here, and listen, we're between two world wars. Everybody knows what happened in Germany during World War II. But we already realize it is coming. So more and more Jews tried to come back to their homeland. But the British authorities were not allowing us back. They literally closed off the borders and did not allow Jews back. By the way, the United States of America was not allowing Jews back. The United States of America literally turned back ships that had gotten out of Europe with Jews and sent them back to Europe, and the people died in the Holocaust. I mean, nobody was accepting Jews, which is why we realized that we had to fight for our land. To make the long story short, because really I'm kind of paraphrasing a lot, at the end of the war of World War II, when the camps are open in Europe, everybody realized what had happened to the Jewish people. And there was a cry in the world that says the Jews need a homeland. And the only place for a homeland is where? Right here. The thing is that the Arabs are saying we don't want any more Jews here. The British are the power. They're in power right here. They don't know how to deal because there are many more Arabs than there are Jews. They're on the Arab side of the argument, basically. So they close off the border. Are we okay on this one? So the Jews are saying to themselves, we can't. This is inconceivable. Okay? So we go to the British and we say, listen, we need to find a solution. Now remember, the British were given a mandate by the United Nations. So the British bring a committee. They tour the land in 1947, and they come up with the Solomon solution. What's the Solomon solution? Cut the baby into half. So this tiny little country, remember we saw how small it was? Okay, they divided it into two countries. Part of the country will go to the Arabs, part of the country will go to the Jews, and Jerusalem will be an international city. They actually voted in the United Nations to create two countries. The United Nations gave this petition a 2/3 majority. 2/3 of the countries in the United Nations said, let the Jews have a homeland. The Jews said, thank you. What did the Arabs say? No. They said 3 times no. No negotiation, no compromise, no peace. So the British, who didn't know what to do with this very sticky situation, decided not to do anything. So they play the bagpipes, they take down the flag, and they sail back to Britain in 1948.
Wow.
In May of 1948, the British leave, and it becomes a free-for-all. And this is what happens. Map number 1. Alright, I put a big map up there. It is black lines. And you no, they're not tank minnows. I will send the maps back so you can take pictures of the maps. That's okay. Okay? But what you're looking at is what happens immediately after the British leave in 1948. Because all of the countries around this have already become nations. Okay? And the minute the British leave, everybody says, we are going to wipe this little Jewish entity off the map. The Lebanese attack from the north. The Syrians attack from the northeast. Across the Jordan River, the two lines that you see on the left are the Jordanians attacking from the east to the west. And from the bottom of this, the Egyptians send two armies, one along the coast and one through the middle, in order to wipe out the nation. The war that you're looking at right now is what we call the War of Independence. 1948, the War of Independence. I've studied the battles of the War of Independence. Sometimes I have a good reason why we won the war. I could tell you militarily, we outflanked the enemy, we took positions, we had, superior fire. Everything's fine. Some of the battles, I don't really know. Some of the battles, I'm going to say the enemy was stupid. There was a battle for the road for Jerusalem, where the enemy commander was shot by an Israeli sniper in the middle of the attack. And instead of finishing the attack and taking control of that hill, the Arabs stopped their attack, went back and had a funeral for him and did the whole mourning for a couple of days. By the time they finished their mourning and their funeral, we brought in reinforcements and held on to the hill. And that's how we kept the road to Jerusalem open. I don't know if you understand, the road to Jerusalem was critical. But some of the battles I really don't know. Up here, behind the hill is a city called Safed. You can't really see anything. In Safed, we were about to lose a battle, and we brought in our heavy artillery. Now, we didn't have any heavy artillery. Remember, we don't have an army, we don't have a country. We didn't have tanks. We had machine guns. We bought up a military surplus from World War II. But basically, we're buying up things underground. Molotov cocktails, explosives. But here's one. We kind of took a couple of pipes, welded them together, and created a makeshift mortar where we fired, rounds against the enemy. The thing is, they didn't do it right, so they didn't put the fins on the rounds correctly. So instead of flying directly, the round kind of tumbled in the air. I don't know if you've ever seen anything like that. It makes a terrible noise. It kind of shrieks when it goes through the air. It's really, really scary. And then when it falls and explodes, it didn't really make a lot of damage, but it made a lot of noise. Now, the Arabs decided in Safed that those Jews were really, really smart. By the way, the Jews are really smart. They can do whatever they want. Now, remember, this is 1948. Hiroshima and Nagasaki had been a few years before that. And the Arabs decided that the Jews had put together an atom bomb. So they dropped their weapons and they ran away. And that's how we won the battle. Now tell me, is that a miracle or is that not a miracle? What I'm trying to say is, at 1948, some of the battles were nothing less than that. And at the end of the war, Israel not only had managed to stop the Arab advance, but we started to push them back. I need you to look at the two lines here. The little circle in the middle is Jerusalem. The Egyptian army was as close to Jerusalem as that line of trees over there in the right is. That's how close they were to Jerusalem. Now, I don't know if you realize that if the Egyptians had conquered Jerusalem in 1948, the state of Israel would not have existed. I would not be standing here today. Ben-Gurion said there can be a Jerusalem with no Israel, but there can be no Israel without Jerusalem. We needed Jerusalem. And we managed to stop the Egyptian advance, not only to stop, but to push them back. And at the end of the war of 1948, we had pushed the enemies back across the borders from the areas that were under Jewish control. And this is what it looks like. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the modern state of Israel. After 2,000 years of desolation, after exile, after persecution and Holocaust, for the first time in 2,000 years, the Jewish people have a homeland. And yes, you can cheer, you can clap, you can whistle. This is a miracle. This is a total miracle. I mean, nobody believed. The American Secretary of State told Tremont it's going to be a Holocaust. Those Arabs are going to wipe the Jews off the map. We were not wiped off the map, and we managed to hold it together. We managed to hold it together, and we managed to create a state. There's good things and bad things on the map, okay? For instance, you see that we've managed to hold on to the area of the Galilee in the north. We've managed to hold on to the coastal area along the middle. And you see the big triangle that goes down to the Red Sea. When you open up your map, you can see there's a little bit of blue way down in the bottom. That's the Red Sea. Now, the Red Sea connects to the Indian Ocean, which means that's a sea outlet to all of Asia. And we managed to hold on to the city of Eilat down here at the bottom, and we managed, as a result of that, to hold on to the big triangle that is mostly desert. It is. It's mostly desert, but it is ours. Wait a minute, I'll get to that. Okay? I will. Shane, huh? All right. He's seen all the movies there. Is this okay? By the way, you want to know how we managed to conquer the Red Sea? We'll get there. Okay? David Ben-Gurion, the last 2 weeks of the war, sent 2 units down to the bottom of the Negev to the Red Sea. He said, go grab that place because that'll give us the whole Negev desert. The 2 units go down. The first unit who gets down to the Red Sea radios headquarters and says, okay, we're on the Red Sea. Okay, we've conquered the Red Sea, the Negev is ours. So headquarters says, okay, we need you to fly a flag, take a couple of pictures so we can publish to the world that we are in control of the Red Sea. So the military commander says, Roger, turns around and says, Yossi, go bring the flag. Yossi says, I didn't bring the flag. Chaim, go bring the flag. Chaim didn't bring the flag. Nobody brought a flag. We're down here. We've conquered the Red Sea. This is the outlet to the rest of Asia. Nobody brought a flag. But we do it the Israeli way. We take somebody's bedsheet, cut it into a square, take a pen with blue ink, and we make a flag out of ink. Make a flag, make the Star of David, make the flag. We put a flag on the pole. Okay, we take some pictures. We got the unit standing under the flag. We radio headquarters. We say, this is ours. You can tell the world that we've conquered the whole Negev desert. Headquarters says yes, and then the guys finish doing that. They turn around and they go skinny dipping. How do we know they went skinny dipping? Because we have the roll of film. Flag, flag, flag. Okay, I'm not going to say. All right, but you got the idea. Yeah. But what I'm trying to say is that's how the War of 1948 was won. If that's not a miracle, I don't know what is. And we have managed to create a state. But it wasn't easy. Because here's the problems in the state. We managed to hold on to the Galilee, okay? But here, in the area in the middle, you can see a kind of a B shape here, okay? That actually encircles the hills of Judea and the hills of Samaria. I call them the hills of Judea and the hills of Samaria. At the end of the War of 1948, remember this is 1948. At the end of the War of 1948, who is holding on to the hills of Judea and the hills of Samaria? Who's in control of them? Jordan. Not the Palestinians, the Jordanians. That's why it's called the West Bank. That's what the world calls the West Bank. Is this clear? The West Bank of Jordan, because Jordan is on the east side of the Jordan River. We call it the West Bank because it's all the pieces of Jordan that are on the west bank of the Jordan River. That's why it's called the West Bank. A lot of people forget that the reason it's called the West Bank is because it was Jordanian. And a lot of people today say that it was Palestinian. That is categorically untrue. Did everybody understand what I just now said? And whenever anybody ever said there was Palestine, it was called Palestine, ask them why it's called the West Bank today. Because the fact that it's called the West Bank means that it was Jordanian. Is that clear? Can I make it more complicated? There's a little strip of land down here that has a city called Gaza in it. That's why it's called the Gaza Strip. At the end of the war of 1948, who's holding on to the Gaza Strip? The Egyptians. Not the Jordanians and not the Palestinians. The Palestinians never had a nation. They never had a country. They never had a government. It was always either Ottoman Turkish, British Mandate, Jordanian, and Egyptian. And this is something I need you to know because this is one of the main aspects that is being, fuzzied up in the media. Totally brainwashed. Was this clear? Any questions about the story until here?
Actual question. Who controls militarily those two areas?
Today? Wait, we'll get there. We got a whole story to go. I see where you're going with this, but let me build it up. Yes, sir.
Why was the reason that Israel don't do the West Bank and attack?
We couldn't. We barely fought. I don't know if you understand, but we were fighting 5 Arab nations. Okay? We didn't have an army. Okay? We barely held on to what we did. The fact that we even have this is a modern day miracle. Okay? But I'm going to make it even more complicated. Okay. What I put up here, and again, I'll send it back if you want, and I'll do it again if anybody wants. But, I mean, the actual lines are not important. But what I put on here is a small illustration of the city of Jerusalem. The city of Jerusalem, at the end of the war, was not completely in Israeli hands. Half of Jerusalem, part on this side, is Israeli. And the minute we actually conquer that half, we turn it into the capital of Israel. But the other half of Jerusalem, including the part that has a little box in the middle. The little box represents the old city of Jerusalem. When we up there, we'll see it. The old city of Jerusalem has walls around it. The walls were built by a little man with a big ego. How do I know he was little? They were all little. How do I know he had a big ego? Well, he didn't call himself the Great, he called himself the Magnificent. Okay, his name is Suleiman the Magnificent. Built the walls around the old city. And the old city has 4 quarters. Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Armenian. The Jewish quarter has been Jewish since the time of King David. And here's the thing. At the end of the war of 1948, half of Jerusalem, including all of the old city, including the Jewish quarter, including the Western Wall, is in Jordanian hands. Is that clear? That is the low side of the war. That is our main miss in the war of 1948. But I can't really blame them because they just managed to hold on. The battles were fierce. We were a population of 600,000, and we lost 6,000 killed in action. 6,000 KIA out of a population of 600,000. 1% of the population was killed in a war. How many people live in the United States today? 300,000? 300 million? No, you're not a billionaire. I think about 320 million. Okay, think about a war in the United States where you lose, 3.2 million soldiers. What would that do to the mindset? What would that do to the morale of the United States of America if you lost 3 million soldiers in a war? And we did not only sink, but we started to build this. Look at this. This is a country that was built since 1948. 1948 was nothing here. Everything that you see has been built by the Jewish people after 1948. That in itself is a modern day miracle. There are countries who have become countries much, much later than us, much, much earlier than us, that have not reached the achievements and the accomplishments that we have. I mean, there are countries all over the world. I mean, this is the land of milk and honey again today. Why is it the land of milk and honey today? Because we're back. We are back. Is this okay? Because I'm going to make it really, really complicated now. So far, so good? We start building a nation. Slowly, slowly building, but we didn't have anything. We were nothing here. We didn't have enough housing. We didn't have enough food. We were rationing food in the beginning. I mean, you had a little step. You get 2 eggs and a piece of meat once a week. I mean, you know, that's the situation. Very, very post-war kind of situation. Okay? The thing is that the minute the state of Israel is created, all of the Jews living in nations around Israel, there was a large Jewish population in Egypt, a large Jewish population in Iraq, in Iran, in Tunisia. All of the Jews living around the world, what happens to them? Where do they have to go? They cannot stay in their nations, and they are kicked out of all the Arab nations, and they come here. In 1948, we're 500,000 or 600,000. In 1952, we are 1.5 million. Wait a minute, let me say that again. 1949, 1950, 1951, 1952, we have tripled the population. We didn't have enough houses. We didn't have enough housing for everybody. Okay? Jews coming from all over the world were putting camps all over the area. Okay. Water? They're putting camps. I mean, what I'm trying to say is somehow we started building a nation out of nothing. Out of nothing. And I have to say, again, I'm not objective, but I'm kind of proud of what we managed to pull together in the last 70 years. By the way, we're going to be celebrating 70 years next week. 2 weeks from now. Okay? So far, so good? So these Jewish refugees, and I'm stressing the term, are kicked out of Arab nations all over the world. They come here and they are assimilated into our culture. They're assimilated into our society. So in the beginning, we didn't have housing, so we put them in camps. But as quickly as possible, we build houses, we build infrastructure, we build a nation. But here's the other side. What happens to Arabs who were living here and are now a part of the Jewish nation? One of two things. The state of Israel officially stated that if you are living in this area and you become a part of the nation, you will be an Israeli citizen just like me. So a lot of the Arabs stayed inside this new nation and became citizens of the state of Israel. Here's a number that most people don't know, and I want you to listen to this carefully because this is something that people don't talk about. Did you know that 1 out of every 5 Israelis, 1 out of every 5 people who has an Israeli passport, 20% of the population of the state of Israel is Arab Muslim? 20% of all Israelis are Muslims. Did you know that? They're citizens just like me. They get the same free health care that I get. They get the same free education. They are citizens just like I am. And nobody talks about it. Nobody talks about the Muslims that live among us. We are the nation that has the largest Muslim minority of any Western nation. We have more Muslims in the States than in the States. We have more Muslims than most of Europe put together. And they live quietly, percentage-wise. And they live among us quietly, peacefully. They pay taxes, okay? They have representatives in our Knesset. Our Knesset is our parliament. I was in the Knesset a little while later. Somebody took me to see the mosque that is in the Jewish parliament. Let me say that again. In the Jewish parliament, there's a mosque that actually is there so all of the Muslim representatives can go and pray on Friday. If that's not pluralism, I don't know what is. Here's the thing. Nobody talks about it. Nobody stresses this, that Muslims can live among us and they can prosper if they live peacefully. Okay. But here's the thing. A large majority of them did not stay. And when Israel conquers this nation that you see, a large percentage of the Arabs picked up, listened to what their leadership told them and ran away. A lot of them went into Lebanon. A lot of them went into the West Bank. A lot of them went into Egypt. And these people call themselves the Palestinians today. And they went into these camps in Lebanon thinking that it's going to be a week or 2 weeks and they will be allowed back. The Arabs told these people that they would wipe Israel off the map. And when the minute Israel's wiped off the map, you will be able to come back. Here's the sad part of the story, or the glad part as far as you want from my point of view. We were not wiped off the map. We were not wiped off the map. Which means these Palestinians who left their homes inside Israel because they listened to the leadership that told them to leave wrongly have been put in camps and have been in those camps for the last 70 years. They are not allowed to assimilate. They are not allowed, they're not allowed to study. They're not allowed to work. Lebanon in camps. Lebanon in camps. Okay? They're not allowed to assimilate. By the way, they are being funded. They are being educated. Okay? Their education, their schooling, their food actually is being paid for by who? No. You. Your tax money is paying for them to live in those camps. Through the United Nations. Through a United Nations organization called the UNRWA. Did you know that?
No.
Just so you know.
I question
Okay. Well, talk to your president. By the way, your president has kind of stepped up into this area, and he's actually talking about it a lot. I mean, just push him a little bit. Give him a little bit of a backwind on this one. Anyway, that is the Palestinian refugee problem. That was how it was created. Okay? And the sad part of the story is that these Palestinians are being used by their leadership to be a political pawn in this game. And that's the situation on the ground at the end of the war of 1948. Whew, that was a long one. Was that clear? Any questions about that? Well, here's what's important for this. The reason this is important is that this story now is being told in another way. Our enemies have, well, fake news you call it, I think, are falsifying the narrative in order to create another whole story about this. I need you to know the truth. I need you to know a couple of things about what we're talking about. For instance, okay, when people say it was always Palestine, okay, ask them when there was a Palestinian nation. When somebody says, you know, the Palestinians have always been there, ask them, has there ever been a president of Palestine? Has there ever been a nation called Palestine? There has never been a country called Palestine. So they're going to say, oh, yeah, Palestine was always there. And I'm going to say, yes. Just like the Rocky Mountains have always been there. You all know where the Rocky Mountains are? You know what the Rocky Mountains? But has there ever been a country called the Rocky Mountains? Has there ever been a president of the Rocky Mountains? Not every geographical term is a political entity. There you go. You guys following me on this? This is very important. When they say Palestine, ask them, when was there ever a Palestinian nation? There never was. It was Ottoman Turkish. It was British Mandate. It was Jordanian. And it was Israeli. There never was a Palestine.
What if they argue that they're like, well, there was a Palestine because the Romans, they named it Palestine.
They named it Palestine because that was, again, the geographical area. They named it Palestine in order to disassociate it from the Jews who called the area Judea. By the way, look to your left. See the big white building over there? Behind that is an antenna. The antenna's on the border with Lebanon. We're on the border with Lebanon right now. I'm going to point it out in a couple places because you can't really see it right now, but we're way, way up in the north. Yes, let's start here.
Where do the Arab call themselves Palestinians start existing by themselves?
Okay. The area was called Palestine.
El área se llamaba Palestina.
Okay, but there never was a people called the Palestinians. Yes, sir.
Do you want to just say what he's
Okay. When did the Palestinians start calling themselves the Palestinians? Okay. That's the basic question. Because if you say there never was a Palestine, okay, why are they calling themselves the Palestinians today?
The Philharmonic Orchestra of Israel was called Palestinian.
Oh, yeah.
The
I mean,
newspaper was
what I'm
called-
trying to say is this. The geographical area was called Palestine, meaning everybody living here was called a Palestinian. Both Jews and Arabs, by the way. Before the creation of the State of Israel, Jews living under the mandate were called Jewish Palestinians. You guys with me on this one? Okay, the thing is that the minute Israel becomes a state, all the Jews living here become Israelis. The Arabs living here become Israeli Arabs, okay? And the Palestinians were under Jordanian control, called themselves Jordanians. after the war, the next war that we're going to talk about, when Israel takes over the West Bank, all of a sudden they stand up and say, wait a minute, we are not Arab Israelis, but we're also not Jordanians, and they invented a new nation called Palestine. And that's when it all happened. I actually talked to a Palestinian who said, I never knew I was a Palestinian until June of 1967. Says I was an Arab. I was an Arab living under the British mandate. I never knew there was a Palestinian nation until the Six-Day War. But that's going to be the next war we're talking about. Any other questions back there? Yes, sir. The embassy to Jerusalem, leave that question up in the air because I need a little bit more of an explanation so you understand what happened and how it happened. And then we'll explain why your president really pulled the rabbit out of the hat on this one. And he totally did. Is this clear? Why do I need this to be clear? So you guys become part of the war that is being fought for the legitimacy of the State of Israel. That's why I need you to know this. Any other questions about, by the way, books? Did I talk about book recommendations? Get your hands on a book called Understanding the Arab-Israeli Conflict. It was written by the professor of Jewish Studies at Moody Bible Institute. His name is Michael Rydelnik. He's a Messianic Jew. He's a believer. He's a Christian. Say again? Okay, Understanding the Arab-Israeli Conflict. You can get it from Moody Press. You can get it on Amazon. Okay? The name of the writer is Michael Rydelnik. R-Y-D-E-L. R-Y-D-E-L. Rydelnik. And he wrote a book that actually goes into the politics that we talked about, but also relates to this whole thing according to biblical prophecy. So if you want a connection between both sides, if you want a really good, concise book about what we just now talked about, okay? Anybody know about the Idiot Guide books? The Idiot's Guide to? There's a book called The Idiot's Guide to the Middle East Conflict. Big yellow book, you ever seen those? It does a really, really good job of going into what we talked about very clearly, very piece by piece, very, So if you want to go deeper, okay, that's a good option. Say again? Okay, The Idiot's Guide to the Middle East Conflict. Yes, ma'am. Somebody's going to have to repeat that one. It is true. He was born in Egypt. Yes, he never was Palestinian. Yasser Arafat was not a Palestinian. He wasn't born in Palestine. He was actually born in Egypt and used the whole Palestinian platform to make himself a world leader. If you want another book, one last book about this subject is the book Exodus. The book Exodus, the movie Exodus was based on a book called Exodus. The book Exodus was written by a guy named Leon Uris, U-R-I-S. And it is a very good book that kind of goes into this, into the connection between the Holocaust and the War of Independence and how that comes together. Whew. Guys, it's a miracle. Do you understand that the whole story that we just now related is a fulfillment of prophecy? Is an actual story. So we're going to be getting off the bus here in a few minutes. Before?
We are right now out of that map. Really?
All the way up on the north, up on the top.
But we're inside the map or the Golan Heights?
We're not on the Golan Heights. We're next to Dan.
Oh, perfect.
Okay? We're going to be getting off the bus for about 2 hours. It's going to be a little bit of a walk. Take your headsets with you.